Bell City, Michigan. A quiet town where Friday night football games and small gatherings are the highlight of teenage life. Everyone knows everyone, or at least they think they do. For Lauren Licari, a bright high school senior, life seemed typical enough. She had good grades, was well liked by her peers, and had a steady boyfriend, Owen McKenney. Together, they were seen as the perfect small-town couple, the kind parents trusted and classmates admired. They'd post smiling photos, laugh at school, events, and dream aloud about the future. But behind the smiles, a shadow began to grow. It started with a text. At first it seemed like a prank. A strange message appeared on Loren's phone, something unsettling, something cruel. Then Owen received one, too. Both thought maybe it was a classmate playing a joke. After all, in high school, gossip spread like wildfire, and jealousy sometimes fueled mean-spirited pranks. But then the texts kept coming, dozens of them, day and night. Some were threatening, others humiliating. Many were explicit. The sender seemed to know everything about them, what classes they were in, where they had been that afternoon, even private details they had never shared publicly. Soon, the messages weren't just words, they were weapons. Lauren and Owen found their relationship strained under the constant barrage of harassment. They fought, cried, and grew paranoid. Who could be doing this? Was it a friend, a stranger, someone they passed in the hallway every day? At first, Lauren confided in her mother, Kendra Licari. Kendra was seen as a supportive mom, active in the community, present at school events. She reassured Lorene, told her not to let the bullies win. Kendra even encouraged her to keep a record of the messages, in case things escalated. But they did escalate. The messages grew darker, more invasive. They described private arguments Lorene and Owen had, things that happened when no one else was around. It felt like the sender wasn't just some distant harasser. It felt like someone was inside their lives, watching every move, terrified. Lauren and Owen went to school officials, then the police. Investigators began looking into the case, combing through the texts. At first, suspicion fell on classmates. Maybe a jealous ex. Maybe someone angry at Lauren's popularity or Owen's reputation. Students were interviewed, phones were checked, but nothing stuck. Then the harassment expanded. Owen's family began receiving messages to pass. Some accused him of terrible things. Others tried to drive wedges between him and Lauren, painting him as untrustworthy. The campaign of harassment was relentless. By this time, Lauren wasn't sleeping. She lived in fear of the next notification on her phone. Every buzz meant another insult, another cruel threat, another reminder that she and Owen were being targeted by someone with terrifying knowledge of their lives. The police escalated the investigation to state authorities, then the FBI. Digital harassment of this scale, with such sophistication, wasn't common in a small town like Bell City. Agents began tracking the messages. They traced IP addresses, examined the apps used, and studied the patterns. Whoever was behind it was careful, using anonymizing services, spoofing phone numbers, covering their tracks with layers of digital deception. But even careful criminals make mistakes. The FBI eventually found threads leading back to a source. The digital trail, though twisted and concealed, pointed to one person, and when the name came back, investigators couldn't believe it. The harasser wasn't a jealous classmate. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some shadowy figure hiding in the dark corners of the internet. It was Kendra Licari, Lorene's mother, the very person who comforted her during the torment, the one who encouraged her to collect the texts, the woman who told her she'd be safe, that the truth would come out. For over a year, Lauren had been confiding in the person responsible for her suffering. The FBI's findings left local police stunned. Kendra had been disguising her digital identity using advanced spoofing apps, generating hundreds, eventually thousands of messages. She played both roles, the comforter in person and the tormentor behind the screen. When confronted, Kendra denied it, but the digital evidence was overwhelming. For Lauren, the revelation shattered her world. Her tormentor wasn't outside her home, it was inside. Every tear she shed, every sleepless night, every moment of fear had been orchestrated by the person she trusted most. Owen, too, was devastated. Not only had he endured the harassment, but he had watched his girlfriend suffer, unaware that the enemy was her own mother. The community of Bell City recoiled in shock. How could a mother do this? Why? What possible reason could there be to terrorize her own daughter and her daughter's boyfriend? As the news spread, the story turned national. Small-town scandal became a national headline. True crime enthusiasts, parents, and teenagers everywhere were horrified. The betrayal was so complete, so incomprehensible, that it felt like something ripped from a psychological thriller, but it was real. The FBI had the records. The evidence showed the lengths Kendra went to conceal her identity, masking her phone number, creating fake accounts, timing the messages to maximize emotional damage. It was premeditated, calculated, cruel, and the question remained, why, even? As Kendra faced charges, the motive wasn't clear. Some speculated about mental health struggles. Others believed it was a twisted form of control, an attempt to keep Lauren dependent on her dot. But in the end, no explanation could undo the damage. Lauren's life had been shattered by the person who was supposed to protect her. Owen's trust in the world was shaken, and Bell City was left with a story that would forever stain its image. The golden couple had been the victims of a nightmare no teenager could imagine, and their tormentor wasn't lurking in the shadows. She had been sitting at the family dinner table all along. The FBI's discovery rocked everyone involved. For weeks, investigators had been buried in data logs, phone records, and spoofing applications. They had expected the culprit to be another student, maybe even a jealous rival in Lauren's class. But instead, the evidence pointed back to the last person anyone imagined, her own mother. Kendra Licari. At first, the lead investigator refused to believe it. A mother deliberately tormenting her own daughter with thousands of abusive messages. It seemed unthinkable. Yet the digital fingerprints didn't lie. The IP addresses, masked and rerouted across multiple services, eventually slipped. Traces of login activity tied back to Kendra's accounts. Timestamps of messages coincided with periods when she was home alone. Even the language used in the harassment phrases, word choices, punctuation, matched her everyday writing style. It was as if the mask she had worn online had finally cracked. When police confronted her, Kendra tried to deny it. She said the technology was wrong, that the evidence had to be mixed up. She even tried to suggest that maybe someone had hacked her, or was trying to frame her. But the volume of proof was overwhelming. Over 12,000 messages, threats, accusations, sexual harassment, targeted psychological manipulation, all traced back to her devices. In the eyes of investigators, there was no doubt Kendra Licari had been living a double life. What made the case so haunting wasn't just the betrayal, it was the sophistication. This wasn't a single cruel prank or a moment of emotional weakness. It was a sustained campaign carried out over the course of a year. Kendra used spoofing applications to disguise her number. She created fake accounts to hurl insults and threats. She studied her daughter's life closely, weaving private knowledge into the messages so they would seem all the more terrifying and believable. She even escalated the attacks, strategically timing them during school hours, late at night, or during moments when Lauren was already vulnerable. It was psychological warfare, and Lauren had no escape. The question everyone asked was simple: why? Why would a mother inflict such trauma on her own child? Some speculated that Kendra wanted control, that she wanted Lauren to become more dependent on her, to sever her ties with Owen, to come running back to her mother for protection. Others believed Kendra suffered from deep psychological issues, possibly linked to forms of factitious disorder known as Munchausen by proxy, where a caregiver manufactures or causes harm to elicit sympathy and attention. But whatever the reasoning, it was impossible for anyone even seasoned investigators to fully comprehend, because no explanation could justify what Lauren had endured. When Lauren learned the truth, she was devastated. The very person she had leaned on, cried to, confided in, was the architect of her pain. Every sleepless night, every panic attack, every tear shed in her mother's arms, all orchestrated by those same arms. For Owen, too, the revelation was crushing. He had been blamed in some of the texts, accused of things he never did. His reputation had been tarnished, his mental health shaken, to discover that it was his girlfriend's mother behind it all. It was betrayal stacked upon betrayal. The fallout within the Likari household was explosive. Trust shattered instantly. Lauren could no longer see her mother as protector. Instead, she saw a manipulator, a deceiver, and an enemy disguised as family. News of the arrest spread like wildfire. In Bell City, whispers turned into headlines. Parents who had once chatted casually with Kendra at school events recoiled in disbelief. Students who had admired Lauren's resilience suddenly realized her suffering had been magnified by a betrayal beyond comprehension. Soon, the case hit national media. It wasn't just another cyberbullying story. It was a story about family, trust, and the terrifying ways technology can be weaponized. The image of a mother secretly tormenting her daughter captured headlines across the country. Outlets described it as chilling, unfathomable, and a betrayal that defied human instinct. Court documents revealed the scale of the harassment. Thousands of texts and messages sent using sophisticated methods to avoid detection. Investigators described it as calculated cruelty. The charges mounted: stalking, harassment, and the use of technology to commit abuse. When she finally stood before a judge, Kendra showed little emotion. The courtroom was filled with tension. Lauren and Owen sat quietly, their lives still shattered. Reporters lined the back rows, capturing every detail. The prosecutor laid out the evidence: the spoofed numbers, the IP traces, the app logs, the sheer volume of messages. They painted a picture of a woman who had spent months carefully constructing an illusion of an anonymous tormentor, while all the while maintaining the facade of a caring mother. When the verdict came, it was clear Kendra was guilty, but for Lauren, justice wasn't simple. How do you heal from wounds inflicted not by a stranger, but by your own parent? How do you rebuild trust when the person you relied on most was secretly orchestrating your worst fears? Therapists who studied the case compared Lauren's trauma to survivors of domestic abuse. Betrayal trauma, they explained, cuts deeper when The betrayer is a caregiver. The person who should be your shield becomes your attacker. The mind struggles to reconcile it, often leaving scars that last a lifetime. For Bell City, the scandal became a cautionary tale. Parents wondered how well they really knew the people around them. Students became more wary about the messages on their phones. Teachers and officials revisited policies about digital safety, and across the internet, the story sparked debates. Some argued Kendra's actions were rooted in mental illness and demanded compassion alongside punishment. Others insisted there was no excuse, that her actions were deliberate, cruel, and deserving of the harshest penalties. But no matter the debate, the central truth remained. Lauren and Owen's lives had been forever altered. In interviews following the trial, Lauren admitted she struggled daily with trust. She described feeling as though the ground beneath her feet had been ripped away, leaving her standing in free fall. Her story resonated with thousands who had faced betrayal from loved ones. People wrote letters of support, messages of solidarity. Strangers reached out, offering hope, reminding her she wasn't alone, but healing, she said, was slow. As the dust settled, Kendra's motives remained shrouded in mystery. Even with the guilty verdict, she never fully explained why. Was it jealousy, control, a desire for attention, or something darker that even she couldn't put into words? The unanswered questions only deepened the sense of unease, because if a mother could do this to her child, what else might remain hidden behind closed doors? For Lauren and Owen, the scars would remain long after the court case ended. But they also represented something more, a warning to the world about the dangers that can lurk, not just online, but within the very people we trust most. The trial was over, the gavel had fallen, and the name Kendra Licari was forever etched into true crime history. But for Lauren, the story didn't end in the courtroom, because the hardest part wasn't watching her mother be sentenced, was waking up every day and trying to piece her life back together. For months, Lauren lived with the echo of those messages. Every notification that buzzed on her phone still sent a jolt of fear through her body. Every ping sounded like a ghost from the past. She would read over old texts not because she wanted to, but because her brain replayed them like scars carved into memory. She remembered nights when she cried in her room, clutching her pillow, thinking a faceless monster was after her. Only now she knew that monster had been her own mother. Trust was shattered. When friends reached out, Lauren hesitated. When Owen tried to comfort her, she wondered if it was safe to lean on anyone at all. The betrayal had burrowed deep, convincing her that closeness was dangerous, that love itself could turn into a weapon. For Owen too, the scars lingered. He had been painted as a villain in some of the texts, accused of cruelty and betrayal he never committed. He carried that weight for months, not just battling the harassment but also the suspicion it cast over his reputation. And when the truth came out that it had all been Kendra, left him reeling. He wanted to be Lauren's protector, her safe place. But how do you protect someone from their own parent? The young couple leaned on each other, but both were deeply fractured. In Bell City, the shockwaves didn't fade quickly. Parents whispered at community gatherings, wondering if they had missed the signs. Teachers at the school re-examined their own vigilance. How had no one suspected that the supportive mother at meetings was secretly orchestrating a year-long campaign of terror? Neighbors who once exchanged friendly greetings with Kendra now crossed the street to avoid her name. To them, she was no longer just a woman from town. She was the embodiment of betrayal. Nationally, The case ignited conversations far beyond Michigan. On social media, hashtags trended. Hashtag high school catfish, hashtag digital betrayal, hashtag when mom is the monster, PODCASTS dissected the psychology. News shows debated whether Kendra's actions stemmed from mental illness or sheer cruelty. Parents across the country asked themselves uncomfortable questions. Could I ever see the warning signs if something like this happened in my home? The story was haunting because it was so intimate. True crime usually deals with strangers, predators in the dark, or killers lurking on the edges of society. But this was different. This was family, and that was what made it unforgettable. As Lorene slowly stepped back into the world, she found herself in the center of attention she never asked for. Reporters requested interviews. Documentaries wanted her voice. Strangers sent her letters of support, telling her she was strong, brave, and inspiring. But inside, she didn't feel strong. She felt broken. Therapists explained what she was experiencing: betrayal, trauma. It was a wound that didn't bleed outward, but instead ate away inside. Survivors of betrayal by caregivers often struggled with trust, intimacy, and identity. Lauren wasn't alone in her pain, but that didn't make it easier. Each day was a battle to believe in people again, to see the world as safe, to imagine a future not defined by the shadow of her mother's actions. For Owen, his role shifted. He became not just a boyfriend, but a witness to Lorene's pain. He had his own trauma, but he also carried hers. Together, they tried to carve out something normal, though normal now seemed like a fragile illusion. Meanwhile, the justice system debated Kendra's punishment. Critics argued that her sentence wasn't nearly enough compared to the damage she caused. Some saw her as a manipulator who had destroyed her own child's sense of safety. Others pitied her, suggesting untreated psychological issues drove her to commit the unimaginable. But no sentence, no headline, no explanation could restore what was lost. For Lorene, justice was complicated. Watching her mother in handcuffs didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss layered upon loss. She hadn't just lost her childhood innocence, she had lost her mother forever. And yet, amid the wreckage, a quiet resilience began to grow. Lauren started speaking, carefully, cautiously, about her experiences, not to gain fame, but to reclaim her voice. Each word she shared chipped away at the silence her mother had tried to trap her in. Each step toward openness was a refusal to let Kendra's cruelty define her future. Support groups helped, therapy helped, and slowly a new narrative began to form, one not just about betrayal, but about survival. Across the country, her story became a lesson. Schools incorporated it into discussions about digital safety. Parents learned that harassment doesn't always come from outside. Experts in cybercrime pointed to it as proof of how easily technology can be weaponized. The case forced uncomfortable but necessary conversations. How much do we trust our digital devices? Can love itself be corrupted by control? What does safety mean when the threat comes from the people closest to us? For true crime audiences, the story remained chilling because it blurred the boundaries of villain and protector. We expect monsters to live in shadows. We don't expect them to cook us dinner, drive us to school, or tuck us in at night. And that's why this case left such a deep mark. As years passed, Lorene continued her journey of healing. She spoke of building boundaries, of learning to trust. Again, slowly, cautiously, but surely. Her relationship with Owen tested in ways no teenager should ever endure, became a testament to resilience. And while the scars would never vanish, she discovered something her mother couldn't take from her: the strength to move forward today. The story of the Bell City Catfish isn't just a tale of betrayal, it's a warning, a reflection, and a challenge to all of us. It warns us that technology, while powerful, can be turned into a weapon in the wrong hands. It reflects the fragility of trust, especially when broken by those we love most. And it challenges us to be vigilant, not just about strangers online, but about the dynamics inside our own homes. Because sometimes the darkest secrets aren't in the shadows. They're sitting right across the dinner table. And as the story shows, surviving betrayal isn't about forgetting. It's about refusing to let it define you. Her scars tell a story, yes, but they also tell of endurance, of strength, of the courage to walk forward into the light, even after the deepest darkness. This is the legacy of the high school catfish, not just a crime, but a reminder that trust, once broken, can still be rebuilt, not with the person who destroyed it, but within ourselves.